Hey, we are live. We are live and in action. Bear with me. I'm going to open up our chat, make sure everybody can see and hear me and that everybody can communicate in the chat with one another. And so chat's open. We are streaming live in the Facebook group. Let me know if you're here. Comment in the chat. Just check in. Let me know where you're checking in from. Excuse me. And if you're in the Facebook group, scroll down. If you're watching this live, there should be a comment from someone on our team with a link to get you in here. So you can be in the room with us, so you can drive the dialogue. And my hope is that today we'll get a lot of engagement because we won't be driving from a deck. It won't be talking head style, me for 30, 40 minutes talking at you. It'll actually be me sharing and prompting and encouraging folks to chime in with questions. And like I said, we hope to have you kind of direct the dialogue because it's a dense topic. It's important, it's powerful, but it's typically something we would unpack over the course of like 10 or 12 calls in our accelerator. And so we're clearly not getting through it in 30, 40 minutes. What we can do is introduce you to the concept, explain why it's so important and how you could be doing it on your projects as well. So Andre, hey, what's up, man? Good to see you in here. Evan, thanks for checking in, letting us know we are live. And then, like I said, if you're in the Facebook group, check the comments for a link and come jump in here, join us in the chat and let us know you're here. And so I'm going to jump in. Again, I want to be respectful of your time. You're taking time to be here in the middle of the day on a Wednesday. Those that are here live are anyway. And if you're catching this later, don't worry, there's going to be a ton of value, even if you cannot be engaging here live. But obviously, it's always best if you can be. So our intention today is to talk about plan review and how you can be proactive on the front end and save yourself a ton of time and money later. So how do you go about looking at the plan set, and how do you go about laying out like the job and what lies ahead in a very efficient way? And we've talked about like proper project production, right? If you remember, that was a call we did on your professionals, working with your engineer, your architect, your designer, right? All that comes into play here. What I'm going to show you is what it's incumbent on you, your GC, your project manager to do, right? Once you receive back those plans from the architect. So I'm going to jump into a screen share and then I'll keep the chat up and let me know if and when you see the screen. So I make sure that you all are seeing what I am seeing before I go, 45 minutes down the rabbit hole and then realize that I didn't share the screen. We've had that happen before. All right, thanks, Ed. Okay, so yeah, we got some confirm that you guys can see this. So this is great. So what you're looking at is a plan set on the right? And it gets dense as you look at like first floor, second floor layout, but don't get too overwhelmed with that yet. Just know that you're looking at a set of plans. And then what you're looking at is our proprietary plan review checklist. And so this is an evolving doc. This is a document that we make available to our accelerator and our real estate riches mastermind folks so that they can do exactly what we're going to do at a high level today, but they can go deeper. Like I said, just masonry, right? Like just this one section here is 45 minutes to an hour of a call, right? We've gone 45 minutes to an hour on just framing. We've done the same for each of these categories. What this is meant to do is to take you and your team, your GC, your project manager, take you through the plan set before you ever start swinging hammers in the field. So being proactive, here's when you do it. You've got this plan set back, right? Think proper project production, think engineer, architect, designer. When you get a set of construction drawings from your architect, you're going to submit those to the town for approval. And in the meantime, you can have the design working, but what else can you be doing, right? Like a lot of folks are playing a waiting game. They're not doing anything proactive to get ready for the project. Well, what we suggest and what we encourage you to do is to do a proper plan review. Be thorough. Go back and look at this stuff. So we're going to go through it at a high level. Like I said, we're not going to be able to go 45 minutes in on each category, but I want to introduce you to each category and each subcategory so you kind of have it on your radar. And then when the time comes, you can come back to this and you can go that much deeper. So think the trade tracker, right? Likely you've been on these calls in the past. You've seen our trade tracker. It's masonry, framing, exterior doors and windows. Then it's the MEP. Then it's trim tile paint. Then it's insulation drywall floors, excuse me. Then it's trim tile paint. So those trades laid out chronologically that way is the same way this document is laid out, right? And that would make sense, right? That's our proprietary like trade tracker. And this is our plan review. So we're going to do it in the same order. It just chronologically makes sense. So let me jump in. So we'll talk masonry first. Like you see, it's already highlighted and you're thinking about what things need to be demoed for the purposes of having your mason properly bid the work. So be thinking of this, right? Like by doing this exercise, by marking up this plan set, by capturing your notes, you get to then go and get a proper bid and proposal from your subcontractors. Oftentimes, folks get these proposals and they're not all inclusive because nobody did the plan review. And so the tradesman's bidding based on how they read the plan, you're receiving the bid based on how you read the plan. And there's clearly going to be a discrepancy there. And then you can guess who pays for those discrepancies later, right? Like when something is not done and it wasn't on the proposal and you ask to have it done, that's called a change order. And that's when you pay for it. So what we're advocating for is doing this front end work so you don't have to pay for that later. So we'll continue to work through this demo. You want to make sure that they account for whatever it is that you're having them demo. Where are they putting new footings and foundations? Ooh, my mouse. Oh, it's back. Where are they putting new footings and foundations? You could see that's what's going on right here, right? Like you want to draw your eye to that part of the plan, make your notes, make sure that you're capturing that in your request for proposal, your RFP from the trades, concrete and flat work, exterior stuff. What are you doing? Driveways? Where are you putting pads? Where are you putting walkways, right? You wouldn't see that on this part of the plan. You would see that here, right? Like this is where you might look at that. You might say, okay, we're going to need to put a pad somewhere over here. We're going to need to extend this driveway from here all the way to the front, right? We're going to do something about this walkway. The existing walkway is going to go. We're going to redo that. We're going to put a patio somewhere back here. These are the kinds of things you're going to be taking note of. And like I said, making sure you're getting a good, like thorough proposal from your mason. Hardscapes and site work, some of that we were just talking about. Things like Belgian block, limestone, a retaining wall if applicable. Do you have to do any stormwater management? Are you putting any like a seepage pit back in here, right? If so, make sure that's on your proposal. Belgian block, right? Like often forgotten, like, are you going to put Belgian block curb or is this house not warranted? If it does, how many linear feet? And that'll be on your proposal versus later asking him to do it when everybody missed it. Like clearly at that point, he hasn't prepared to do that. He doesn't have those materials on order. He doesn't even expect to be on your job site anymore. And now you're calling him back. And that's when you can expect to pay premiums. And then miscellaneous. So under each of the categories, there's a subcategory for miscellaneous. And that's like those little odds and ends. These are the things that are often missed, like putting in a French drain if that's called for in your market. If you're going to adorn the facade with cultured stone or natural stone, like make sure you're getting that bid as well by your masons. Right? Like I said, we're going to try keep it high level, talk about each of the categories from the trade tracker, and then just touch on the subcategories. We don't have enough time here together today to go as deep as I'd like to go, like we often do, like on our weekly accelerator calls with this, but at least I'm drawing your attention to these things. So when the time comes, you're not blindsided. Again, so now under framing, demo, who's going to remove the existing roof if you're doing an attic level, who's going to peel the subfloor and the sheathing off if you're going to redo the siding, right? These are the kinds of things you want to be conscious of. Who's going to bid that work? That's typically the framer, or you can go and get like a separate demo contractor. But if you're already going to be doing framing, it just makes sense to have that lumped in, but it's got to be on their proposal. Otherwise, good luck getting them to do it. We back out. This thing's acting up on me. Bear with me. And for those that are here and engaging and watching live, encouraging you to engage in the chat, like hit me with questions as we're going through each of these categories. I'm going to keep pushing unless I get questions and then circle back. So what else regarding framing? The exterior doors and windows, that's who's going to be installing them. So you're going to be looking to make sure that there's rough openings for each of your doors and windows, right? Here's the existing house. Like this is going to become a double window now. This bay window is going to become a double window. So where are the new rough openings? Like, are those captured here? Like, did your architect include that, right? And if so, great, capture those measurements, make sure they're available for the framer when he or she needs them. And if they're not there, now this is when you get to catch that, right? You don't get these plans back from the town, approved, stamped, ready to go to work, and then find out 3 weeks from now when you're in the field that there is no rough opening measurements. That's not the time to find out. The time to find out is now, while your plans are being reviewed by the town. So exterior doors and windows, structurally, hangers, brackets, interior staircases, engineered lumber, right? This is, I'll highlight the interior stairs. Like, are you getting those fabricated offsite and then installed by the framer? If so, let's make sure that the framer's proposal accounts for installing the stairs. And then let's also be mindful of who's going to fabricate the stairs, because it's not going to be the framer, right? This is the kind of stuff that you catch now. It saves you a ton of time later, right? These delays later when there's no stairs going up to the second floor and the framer's looking at you, you're looking at them, and nobody knows who's responsible for it. Well, it's because neither of you are, right? There's a stair fabricator that does that. So decorative tray and coffered ceilings, sometimes done in trim, but depending on the depth of those tray ceilings and the tray ceilings, clearly the framer would do, but like those coffers as well, like who's going to frame that? And if it's going to be the framer, then you're going to want him to bid that. You're going to want to have provided him with designs, like where applicable. You're going to catch that by looking at the plans now, long before he's there, right? You're not asking him to tray a ceiling in the master bedroom after he's already framed the ceiling, right? At that point, it's too late. Blocking and boxing. This is one of those things that like you just want to make sure it's included, that they know to do it, right? They're going to be blocking for railings, blocking for cabinetry in the kitchens. These are the kinds of things that aren't always assumed and included. So be aware of that, be making notes of that, be looking at the plan to make sure that's marked. If it's not marked, you mark it, right? Your GC, your project manager marks it. And again, miscellaneous things like a landing upstairs in the attic, so you can use it for extra storage, things like fire blocking so you don't fail inspections. Are there any decks? Are they going to frame for the decks? Exterior doors and windows now, like again, just remember the trade tracker. Think of that first chunk of trades. We're doing masonry, framing, and we're doing exterior doors and windows before we roll into MEP, right? This is the stuff we always talk about. This is where the house gets built. So it's important that you do this, that you go through this exercise before these guys get in the field, right? Once they're in the field, you're playing catch up, and we don't want you in that position, right? There's enough things that are going to happen in the field that you're inevitably going to have to pivot on, right? Like that's the nature of construction. Expect those 1, 2, or 3 small things, those minor things, but control the controllables by doing this exercise, right? So that way you have the bandwidth to address those things. So you can pivot, so you can, like when things inevitably happen, you have bandwidth to address them. But if that's only going to happen if you've done this type of work on the front end, otherwise you'll be doing this and then some, right? You'll be doing this, shooting from the hip, operating on your heels the whole time, plus dealing with whatever inevitably is going to happen in the field. So exterior doors and windows, this is also important from a timeline standpoint, like knowing what windows are going where and how many of them. Like that's not going to happen in 2 weeks, right? Lead times on windows are 4 to 6 weeks. They were as long as 16 weeks during COVID times. So you need to know that, and you need to have these orders figured out. What, like, is it going to be Anderson 200s with grills on the upper and the lowers? Is it going to be double hungs? Is it going to be casements? Where am I going to have transoms or picture windows? All that ought to be on this plan set, and you should be able to identify it, right? There it is. This is the Anderson window. It's a double hung. It's a double window. What's the grill pattern? And let's get that window order in to our supplier long before we need it. Exterior doors, garage door, sliding door, fire door from that garage into the main house. Like these are all things that need to be ordered, things that your GC is going to need to be paying attention to. The worst thing that could happen is you're ready to side the house, but nobody ordered the slider onto the patio. Like now you're in a tough spot, right? Now you've got to wait on this door to arrive before you can side the back of the house. So these are the kinds of things we want you to be proactive about. Exterior, the roof, the siding, the trim. This is how are you going to make the outside of the house look like this, right? Like what are you going to put where? We talked about the door, like what's this garage door going to look like? Here, clearly it's a 2D elevation. Like what are these like doors going to look like? What's this door going to look like? Is it going to have side lights? What's the pitch of this roof? Is it going to be a metal roof, right? Are you going to do metal? Am I clicking? It's acting up. Yeah. Are you going to do a metal roof across all this? There we go. And if so, like, you got to determine that up front, and then know so when they order the asphalt shingles for the top part, they don't just shingle where you want to put a metal roof, right? These are the kinds of things we want you to be paying attention to. A question: if you're working with a GC, would you sit with him in a meeting and go through this review right when you get the plans? Yeah, absolutely, Evan. That's a great question. That's exactly when you do this. Like this plan set goes in for approval with the town. At the same time, you sit with the GC and you do this exercise. And of course, like they're not going to want to do this exercise. I shouldn't say that. A good GC will, but it's incumbent on you to force them to do this, because otherwise you're not going to get like a clean apples to apples bid, right? The proposal is going to come in. And like I said, they read the plans one way, you read the plans the other way. And like, that's where expectation mismanagement, right? Like there's a misalignment of expectations. And then you wind up getting upset with your GC because they're change ordering you, right? Throughout the process. You can avoid all that by doing this, by sitting down with them early on. And if you have in-house project management, like that person drives this effort. If you outsource it to a GC, then it's incumbent on you to sit with the GC, right? And work through this. Now we jump into MEP, the utilities, plumbing, HVAC, electric. Like I said, each one of these is its own call, but I'll quickly start. Like it's utilities, it's the roughs, it's the finishes, right? And then it's the appliances when applicable. And of course, always those little miscellaneous things, but think like order of operations, think like bigger to smaller. Like utilities are the biggest thing, then the roughs, then the finishes, then the appliances or the fixtures, right? So think of it that way and attack the plan set that way, right? Like you're not going to sit with your GC and necessarily tell him what specific light fixture is going over the island before you start construction. What you will want to know is if it's going to be 2 pendants or 1 light fixture, right? Like that's the kind of stuff you want to know. So that way he can advise the electrician accordingly. We just walked a site today where the expectation was that there would be 4-inch hi-hats throughout the house, but the electrician was installing 6s, right? Like that's because that wasn't talked about up front. This is the time to do that. This is the time to have those conversations, working through like a list like this, talking about placement of tubs and toilets. And like, these are the types of things you go back to the plan and you just make sure that you like the layout here, right? Like, do you like the layout of this bathroom? Should this tub be turned horizontally, right? Like this tub is vertically like laid out this way. Should this tub be here against the back wall? Should the toilet be right here, right next to the double vanity? I would argue yes. And in fact, we did change that on this plan set, but wanting you to think about that, like, and does it matter in your market? Does it matter at your price point? Like, is this a miss architecturally? I don't know. That'll be dependent on where you're at, but it's important that you kind of go through this exercise, you think about it. And then if you make the decision to leave it the way it's drawn, so be it, but at least you kind of gave it the consideration it deserved, right? Same thing. Like, how about this layout? Like, is there an opportunity here to enclose the toilet in a water closet, right? Like, if so, like, would the door to the shower have to be relocated? These are the kinds of things that you would catch as you were doing plumbing, right? As you're doing HVAC, like, where are these vents going to be? Where does the architect anticipate you putting the machine in the attic? See here? Like, is that going to work? Is the placement of the machine in the attic going to work based on the rest of the layout of the house? Or are there going to be drops? Are you going to have to build out soffits to bury some of this duct work? Ideally, no. Electric, we just talked about it, hi-hats and placement and sizing, like vanity lighting placement. Like if you have a vanity, a double vanity like there is here, how are you going to light this vanity, right? Is your expectation that there's going to be like a sconce, a mirror, a sconce, a mirror, and another sconce? Or is it there's going to be two pendants? Is it that there's going to be one hi-hat? Like that's the electric plan. You want to be thinking about that stuff. A designer will likely have brought your awareness to this, but if they haven't, this is where you have to do that. This is where you go and proactively think about these types of things. So we won't go too much deeper on like MEP, because I know that like these things can get out of hand if you start talking specifically about what lights go where and what types of lights. Like I said, you're trying to think about counts, right? Like not necessarily the finished fixtures that early on. And then where are you insulating? Are you insulating spray foam in the cantilevers? Like what are you doing specifically? If you have a bedroom above a garage, right? Like that's the case here. So how are you insulating this whole section, right? Because this is above a garage. So you want to spray foam that area, right? You want to be mindful of that and be thinking about like, am I going to do an insulated garage door here, right? Like you're going to catch that now. You're not going to catch that later. Okay, yeah, because this is going to be just underneath the master bedroom. That's important, right? Do I want to spray foam this cantilever right here, this section in the bottom? Yeah, you know, these are the types of things we want to be mindful of. Then drywall, where are you going to put it? How, like what thickness? Are you going to have the drywaller also do the water sealing in the showers? If so, you'll want to make that note. Interior doors and trim, where are you putting barn doors? Like we'll show you an example of what that might look like here. So clearly you don't want this door to open into this bathroom this way, right? Like this door opening in is really hiding a lot of what you've got going on in the bathroom. So I would argue that it makes sense to put a barn door here rather than this door. I would put a barn door, and we are in fact putting a barn door, right? So you have visibility into this beautiful bathroom, no door blocking your line of sight to this beautiful vanity, to this soaker tub with this beautiful tub filler, right? Like you're wanting to pay attention to the barn doors. Here you see a reference to louvered doors, right? In the laundry and mechanical room. Well, here's the laundry room. And I can assure you, the architect didn't account for a louvered door to allow for ventilation into that laundry room, but you're going to need one if you want to pass inspection, right? So I want you to be conscious of that. And this is going to highlight that. This is going to call that out. So you can then go back to the plan, mark it up, right? And let your tradesmen know, let your supply house know when they're doing your interior doors and trim, right? They're field measuring and they're ordering that they're getting you a louvered door for that. And then, excuse me, we'll just wrap up with the vanities and the trim. Like, be mindful of this space. So here's a perfect example, right? Back here, like there's a little bit of excess room to the left. So is there enough room? In this case, there is to the left to extend the vanity such that you can put a makeup counter in the center, in turn, increasing the value, right? Like if you just do a double vanity and it's 60 inches and it's very like this hall bath, right? There's no real like reason in this hall bath. That's fine. You do a 60-inch double vanity and you don't have to get carried away. Here, if you've got the room, you want to take stock, take note of that, use that extra room to do something a little more tricked out for the master. So you could split the two vanities apart and put a makeup counter in the center. You want to catch that now. You want to make a note of that now. So when the time comes to order the vanities, if the designer didn't already order you the appropriate vanity, now you can make that note. You can encourage him or her to do that. So, excuse me. Hopefully this is helpful. I know we went, quick. Like I said, going deep into each of these is a very time-intensive process. We don't want to rush that here. Like encouraging those of you that want to go deeper to reach out to the team, and we'd love to talk to you some more about what we do on our Tuesday night standing calls, where we do that. So any other questions regarding the process, drop them in the chat. I'll do my best to keep up with the chat. I want to be conscious of the time and make sure that we get everybody back to their day in 6 minutes. Yeah. James, can we get a copy of that spreadsheet? Reach out to Evan and we'll see what we can do. An editable version of this is kind of something it's a proprietary doc that we make available to our accelerator and mastermind folks. So we can give you a PDF version, and that would be my gift to you guys. We work through these editable versions, like I said, on these calls on Tuesday nights. Any other questions regarding how you might do this, or when you might do this, or the timeliness of this? I can tell you that this exercise is a $10,000 like net savings every time. Like it's easily 10K in architectural oversight. If you do this exercise and you're thorough and you're diligent, you're going to source 10 grand. It's just the way it works. It's just like these types, and that's on the low side. That's just like simply swapping out CDX for OSB sheathing, right? Like architects don't draw with OSB, they draw with CDX. Well, if you swap out the plywood and you sheathe the house with the cheaper of the two, depending on the size of the house, that's a couple of $1,000 right there in savings, right? These are the kinds of things, and we're not talking about the value add, right? Like by doing the double vanity, pulling it apart, putting the makeup counter in the center, like what's that do from a value standpoint? What's that do like when it comes to resale and the buyer walks in and sees that and realizes like, wow, this was thought out. Like this house priced at this, dollar amount makes sense because of this type of stuff, because they thought about this type of stuff, versus the like nothing's thought about, everything's done like shooting from the hip. It's all like Home Depot runs type of finishes and fixtures. And like then you're gonna be pricing it like builder grade, as opposed to pricing it like semi-custom and getting that, right? Like getting that extra 50 or 100K, depending on where you are and what market you're in. If you're building to this standard, it's not uncommon to get 50 or 100K more than your subject property comp, right? So another question, how often do you catch things that the GC misses during this process? Well, ideally you're catching these things so the GC doesn't miss them, because what the GC is going to do is going to revert to the plan and use the plan as the excuse for why the thing looks the way it does in the field. So they'll argue that, well, I just built what I was given, right? The architect drew it, I just built it. Well, this is where you bridge those two and you catch a lot of these things so that excuse doesn't fly, right? Later, if they built to the plan after you've done this plan review exercise, then clearly they're just deviating, right? They're doing whatever's easiest for them. What you're trying to do is get in between those two and make it so that like that alleviate that excuse, right? Eliminate that excuse, I should say. Ed, does cheaper materials decrease property value versus the quality of work? I would say, yeah. Well, I say they're both going to negatively impact value, right? If you're going to be cheap with your like fixtures and finishes, and the quality of the work is like cheap as well, you're going to pay. If you can do good quality work with good quality fixtures and finishes, you're infinitely better off. If what you're asking is like, if you have to sacrifice one, which one do you sacrifice? What I'll say is that good quality work with, I don't want to say subpar materials, but like basic materials is passable. You're not like, no one's going to come in and fault you for crooked tile or poor cuts, right? Because you won't have them. You will have just used 3-inch base instead of 6-inch base. And so, yeah, you've chosen the cheaper option, but you did the work well, right? So that's the best. If you have to choose where to sacrifice, that's the choice you make. But ideally, you're not making that choice. You're using the right quality materials with the right quality labor. You're not sacrificing either. But if you're going to sacrifice one, the one that you can get away with is really good quality labor installing like basic builder grade materials. And you see that all over. If If you've ever toured a production builder's home, something like a Lennar or a DR Horton or something like that, right? Like they're just out there stamping these houses out. They all look the same. They do a decent job. Like the labor, the finish quality is decent. The products they're using are the most generic stuff you'll ever find, but it looks clean. And so, that's how they get away with it. But that's not what we're advocating for. That's not what we teach. That's not our model. So again, I know we went quick here. I hope this was helpful. I hope you were able to get a lot of value out of this exercise. We couldn't possibly go deep on all of it. We just wouldn't have the time. Encouraging those of you that want to go deep, though, who see real value in this exercise, to hit up the team, reach out to us. And we're happy to tell you more about what we do on these accelerator calls every Tuesday. And like I said, this is easy. This exercise is a no-brainer, 10K in your pocket right out of the gate. And that's excluding the value. That's excluding how much more your house is going to sell for versus the comp, because you did this work, right? I'm talking about just the mistakes, the architectural oversights, those things that are going to cost you money right out of the gate. That easy 10K. So happy to have shared this with you guys. And any other questions on this, drop them in the comments. If you watch this back later, you weren't here live with us, we check back on these comments, right? So hopefully we can get your questions answered even after the fact if you drop them here. And Evan, we'll drop the link. Anybody wants to connect with us offline regarding Accelerator or the PDF version, just comment and we'll reach out. All right, guys, have a great day. And I'll see you back here next Wednesday for another live.